where it's going to be. It's going to be the dead center of the car underneath, or somewhere in a cross member where I can't get my little fat fingers into. Murphy says one or the other. So take a look at what you're going to do, what you want it to do. Some of the barks, if I was going to do an alder, live edge burl, a large live edge bark, it's not going to show much, except that I have a live edge around the outer because it's a really thin layer of bark. This apple is really nice thick bark, but this tree is over 100 years old, so I know why it is. If I take a look at some of the white birch, which you get a true white birch and you get it so that it's really old, it's no longer really white most of the time. It has deep crevasses all over it. It starts fissuring. There's a cork bark oak. I don't know if any of you have ever seen them. They do exist here. There's a bunch on Keyport and there's some on Bangor. The bark is probably about, I would say, 2 inches thick. So kind of like if you're looking at sequoia or a giant redwood and its bark, it has big craggy fissures. You know, I don't know how well that would hold up on a redwood one. I may want to try that just for giggles sometime. But that's a lot of bark to be hanging out there without a lot of structural support next to it. Because bark isn't necessarily the strongest thing. Now, so I picked up these 2 velvet pieces of wood. We're going to do a live edge turning tonight. I'm inherently lazy. I don't like having to sit there and turning some flat face on it and putting a waste block. I'm kind of straight to the point. You have the bandsaw, you kind of know what you're going to do. These are pretty easy. That's pretty centered on the wood. So why did I do that?
Because you got a sharp Forstner bit.
That helps. It beats the dull one, I can tell you that much.
Flat place for your skirt. Or your face plate if you do a face plate.
Well,
For the jaws.
I don't bark, and if all its infinite wisdom doesn't have any strength, like I said, and it'll go someplace. Usually, if you're just trying to grab bark, it's going to fly off. And I don't like things flying off while I'm turning them. Not saying they haven't done that. There we go. I'm ready to go. I didn't have to do anything spectacular to do this. I'm basically going to make a foot up here. I can then turn it around, chuck it here, make a foot on the other side, and I can turn my bolt. I didn't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to. But if I were to put this into the bark and do that, you know, there's a lot of force when you're out here turning against it, going away. But this way, since I went down to the solid wood, this live center is going to do a great job doing what it's supposed to do. Who all's turned a live edge bowl? Who is not? You're going to want to try this, right? Good.
Yes.
Now, not saying I don't have drive spurs. I do have them. If I'm driving a big piece of wood, I will put a big drive spur in. But this drive spur, especially if I know when I did my cut here, I'm off and I want to shift this, I can shift it with a drive spur. But this drive spur bolts up into my chuck. And here's another one that bolts right into the chuck. Won't do is drive the big piece of wood and work the smaller ones if I know I've got to cut it off, because I can tell that I'm pretty darn close to the face here where I wanted it to be nice and straight. And then we're going to see if I turn this thing on. I'm not used to this lathe. I use a Powermatic most of the time. So, I do have a tendency to run things as fast as I can run them. Oh, it looks like my mic is dying. I made these. This is a template for the inside and outside dimensions of my number 2 jaws on my chuck. Here's my number 3. So I have nothing special. I can have a center line. I can go like this and go, okay, that's what I need to do. I know roughly what size I got to go to when I'm doing it. Or you can have one of these already set up all the time if you're doing something specifically to a set size. Really slow. I just started with the pull cut, going into the depth of yeah, so I want to go to about there, okay. This one's hard to get in. I'll make it a little bit smaller. Now I don't need to make a massive foot for what we're doing because we're doing a small one. When I do the bottom, I don't want to put a really heavy foot on the bottom over here because the more heavy foot, I can go as deep as the pith before I really want to have the bottom of it. If you go, so you may be a really thin foot when you do this, depending how much room you left yourself. What I do say about that is you need to be careful. One of the things that you've just done, since the grain structure is this way, it can shear off really easy. Okay? So, So a lot of my work is going to be done between centers, just the way I do it. Now I'll just check and see where that pit is running, how close we are to it. We're really close. You don't need a really heavy gouge. I do have to have some heavy gouges. A lot of times I use the 3/8 or the 1/2 inch for a lot of work. Now, is it better to turn the inside of this bowl first or the outside? It's going to be easier in this case to turn the outside. You can turn the inside first, but in this case it's probably going to be easier to do the outside. All right? So it'll help you determine a little bit about what you're going to do. I want to see how well this little bugger works. I'm going to grab a bigger gouge. And now that I'm in the chuck and I got this nice center here, supporting everything, I can go a little faster until my lathe starts shaking a little bit, then back off. Oh, a little bugger. Bevel pretty much. I would actually be using a different press than this one. At home, I would use my curved dress. Come here. Move this a little bit back over to center. So, on this shape, I've come out here at least, and I know that I've got bark on both sides. And one of the things I want to determine is how far up the sides I can go and still put the bark for the bottom of my bowl. This one's not going to be a lot because you notice the one side over here, I don't have a lot of space. I can make my foot a little smaller, give me more room, not an awful lot to do that. So, should be more balanced now. Should be able to run this up a little more. The other thing I'll suggest is you be cautious when you get out at the bark. Take light cuts because you don't want to pop it off again due to being heavy-handed. Okay, we can
So
still.
Scott, that was why you turned the gas around, right? So you can come in and
I can come into it. I'm watching the shadow. A lot of the times when I'm normally doing bowls, I don't even look at where the cutter's at. I'm looking at the far side, seeing what it's doing. I'm not paying too much attention. Except for the initial when I'm on a live edge one coming in, I want to see how much of a gap I have before I hit it. And I'm almost putting it so that this thing is perpendicular to the wood. So basically I'm not cutting. More of a scraping action at that point. And then slowly I just raise it up a little bit and then come in until I get far enough in that I know I'm past the bark on that outside tip, and then I can come in and feather it in from the other direction. So how much room do we have here? It's not too bad. I'll move you over again. And just do a soft cut and see how well that blends the shape in. See if I need to come up the side some more. That's not bad. Not bad. turns wood with a skew? Besides me. Who here turns wood with a skew? Yeah, I just like that this thing does not have a curve. Tool rest. I don't think we're going to be able to come up too much higher up the shoulders. I kind of like the winged approach to it this one's going to give us. So that being said, good. Get this out of the way.
You're using this skew as a scraper, aren't you?
I am.
You didn't mention that. Somebody may end up in trouble if they weren't paying attention.
If you haven't paid attention to how a skew is being used, it's just like any other tool that'll have nice sharp edges. Pay attention to how the edges of your knives are being applied to your wood. You can use a skew in lots of places most people would not use one. It is a scraper. It is a negative rake scraper for all intents and purposes when it's laid flat on its side straight in. It has really nice advantages if you treat it like that, especially this one, since I have a radius curve and not a straight curve on it, I can slowly blend as I go across and have a larger area. I do have to watch how much of the blade comes in contact with the wood. You do not want all 100% of that blade in contact with the wood. It's just too much surface area. That being said, if you're trying to blend things, and you know how many times you use the end chuck, because instead of starting out over here, or you're ending up hitting the edge, and you don't want to hit this edge after you've got to the bottom because of your grind on it, and you're close and you got a little bit of ripple. Hey, a skew is a beautiful instrument. What else? Well, I'm not going to say most wood turners may not have them. Furniture maker's going to have them. And I actually use these a lot. Walt knows what these are.
Cabinet scraper.
Cabinet scrapers.
Broken pieces of glass.
Yeah, they sound like that. I use this one a lot. It's called a French curve, for those of you who took art class years ago. It's a continuous arc change. One of the nice things, and I did bring it in case I needed it, is I use this little guy here. and I'll put him so he's light, if I can't see well enough, down here at the bottom, so that when this is up there against the wood, if I were to sit there and place, and now I look down here, and I see a big gap between two high sides, because that's what this is going to, it's going to hit your high sides. And you can follow it as and you just move it back and forth, and you can see where along the curve it fits the curve of your bowl. Because you don't want any flat spots. Because this should be a continuous arc. Right? That's what we strive for. So you can move it along there, find out where it is, turn your lathe on, and use the scraper for what it was designed for. It'll go through and you can just peel off those high marks really easy. Don't go like this when you're using it. Do chamfer it at an angle, like I would the skew, just like this. You can use the nice flat one. Who's done a rolling pin? So you've got either 12 to 18 inches of flat, straight surface. Well, as you go down and you've taken your calipers and you've marked your two ends, because you know you want your two ends to be the same diameter, so not one end smaller, unless you're doing those funny French ones. And sorry, mine got heavy in the end. You can go like this, and you can see if you've got higher low spots, but you can also use this to go all the way down and scrape it if you need to. Wait till you get to your almost finished cut though, and use it there. But you can use it for that. And I use this a lot of times on the bowls. If I have a little hard spot, especially if you can't feather your cuts in very well, you just can't see them from where you're working. Use them this way. Now, I'm going to leave my nice support rest in here as long as I can, and I'll take it away the last minute. One of the things I will do, whether it's the first cut or the last cut when I'm starting doing my shape, because you notice I have a lot of wood left to remove, I will continually follow the same arc. Like I was going to do a finished cut to begin with. And the reason I do that is because I can get the motion, because when I want to do the final one, to come in blind and all of a sudden have to do that and get it right, because you can't go any thinner, is really tough. So if you can kind of practice what you're doing, look at it, you'll find out it'll be much easier to go do it. You're not a speed race. You don't have to take a ½ inch off at a time. None of us would do that, would they? Except me. And I just rotate my little tool. The closer I get to the center, I want to go slower and slower, take less of a cut, be cautious, make it nice and smooth. See if there's transitions you don't like ahead of time, so you know where you got to work. But otherwise, it looks pretty good.